Okay, is everybody ready to go? It's all a bit spread out. Right, we're just going to pick up where we left off a little bit with the morning plenary and get into a little bit more about the detail about how this movement might work. Just bear in context that we're trying to be innovative, but we're also looking at being collaborative with places. So some of the language is fairly generic, but we will look at having, conversation with each place around specific needs. So this is around a new generation of sustainable people and places.
Yeah. So, so the question we're asking ourselves is how can we be smart about getting communities active and promoting sustainability? And I mean, as I said earlier, the key components that we've seen work have been making it family friendly, engaging with smart technology, and making it an inclusive environment for everyone, and also making the environments places where groups can exercise as well as individuals, and people new to exercise can exercise at the same time as people who are physically very active. So we're going to talk to you about our app that will be available at the beginning of next year. Yeah. We're going to do some testing, but we'd very much like your feedback today on if this would work in your place. We're looking for partners to pilot. We've got already the 1,000 sites out there, most of which are in the UK. So we're looking for partners, and to do this in existing sites won't cost the earth. To do this on new sites, on new gyms, we can do this really well because we can put all the elements in that we feel we need to have in order to capture the data in terms of who's using the site with the smart tech, as well as getting people onto the app with the right sort of signage and on the physical space, and design the space to enhance what we're trying to do, which is actually encourage people to do group activity together, as well as individuals to turn up and just use the equipment for free, and families to turn up and be able to simultaneously get active. So going forward, there's a lot more opportunity, but saying that, going back, there's still a lot of opportunity as well. So I would like to sort of explain what we're why a member of your public might use our app. Firstly, it would be to find a gym. So as I say, there's already gyms out there, so let's let them know where it is. So if any of you have ways that we can promote this information, then that would be great to talk to you about that. The second thing is we want to encourage people to use this app to capture what they're doing, not just on our gyms, but in the park or in the leisure centre. So it's something that we can feed into for global and all the bigger capture of data, just to give us that picture of what our communities are doing. So we're looking for help in terms of how we can promote people to take this up, whether it's something like GP referral and encouraging people patients to track their progress using the app. That would be great, because we want to demonstrate that people with diabetes are making progress using our facilities or any facilities out there through exercise, and we want to make that case. The other thing the app does is it enables people to share their workouts to their friends, and obviously if we want to use people's friends and family networks to get more people down to the space. So that's another thing that's going to do. And then we want to work with, if you are from a sport, or you have a particular program that we could put on the app, how to train for a triathlon or how to train for a particular sport or activity, then we want to be working with you to help people get on their pathway and perhaps into a different space. We very much see this as the start of the journey. And it also, we want to embrace activators in the community, existing activators, leisure operators with their own trainers. We want everyone to be part of this, and we're looking for partnerships with leisure operators as well, so that you can use our spaces, or these spaces, to as outreach. So it's everyone's welcome, basically. But also, if a local person wants to become an activator, and they're from a housing estate and they want to train up, we're looking at partnerships to enable people to become activators, so that they can earn some income from this. And okay, the space is always free, but if they're then getting their community active and the community is prepared to pay, then that's a great thing for local employment as well. We have got the potential on the app to give people points, and through the energy generating gym equipment, we can make that point system quite robust, and you can't sort of fake it. So you can pair with our devices and they can earn points, or you can give them points across the board. And we're looking at corporate partnerships as well. We've previously worked very well with corporates like Adidas, and we're one of the approved suppliers for Tesco's as well. So yeah, we it's there ready for your involvement and ideas. So, did you want to go on the next?
I can do. I suppose that the point at this juncture is that it's, we're here as TGO, but this is a place-based activation tool. So it's not gym specific. The reason we mention the gym is because when we get onto the quantitative data, there's a direct correlation between that Bluetooth stuff. But obviously what we're looking at in terms of the Sport England strategy and what DCMS is about is how sport can be pathways for employment for people. We know that in places where there may be consideration for infrastructure, there's always that fear about maintenance, there's always that fear about indemnity, there's always that fear about, what do we do in the long term. And of course it was quite scary to see Helen's presentation about the fact that over the next 3 years 59% of councils looking to sell off their parks. Well, this could be a way that we could provide councils with a politically manageable medium to do a valid and worthwhile asset transfer into a community group that's providing activity and volunteering opportunities back, as well as all the health outcomes from that. So it's looking at those places where I guarantee if you go into your local parks now, there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, like from British Military Fitness or a Pilates instructor or a personal trainer. They're using that space anyway. They're making their money out of that for the people that want to pay for that, but there's nothing being harnessed back to the local authority. So we want to connect the activators through the app so that the data comes back to total activity, not just what is led by the system process. So for the local people, this gives them a way to connect to an audience that will be driven by the wider machine. So we'd be looking at council comms people, sports development, public health, all advocating this approach to activity as part of their wider strategies, but bringing in some new advocates and new players into that. So for the place, obviously you can see how active your park or wider place is. And you can look at that, like we said this morning, as a social barometer. Why is it working in some places better than others? Now we know that within a town, you know, there can be lifestyle differences within a couple of miles of each other, but it actually tries to highlight the system and how it's working for that place. There's an opportunity for that to, through a community enterprise or a social enterprise, to put some money back into that space and to hold that money for maintenance or to reinvest back in the parks. We're hearing all this morning about how things are getting cut, things are being sold off, money's tight, it's non-statutory, they're being hit. We think this kind of activity underpins all the statutory things that happen in local authorities around mental health, social inclusion, reduction of loneliness. And the app will be able to capture that and make that case for you. Do you want to talk about that feature?
Yeah, so obviously I mentioned it before, that would be one of the key features why people would download the app, is just to find one of these gyms. So that's going to be obviously quite key for us to communicate, whether it's on, in doctors' surgeries or in your places. It's just getting that information that downloading this app would enable you to find one of these gyms. And what we're going to do to every site that we've got out there is then create a digital notice board for each gym, so that the park manager can put a message up, or we can start to sort of give stats about how people are feeling in that place and how active that place is. Again, as I was saying before, another reason people would be using this app is to log and track their workout, and that this is for us obviously quite key. It's one of the reasons why people will stay on the app, but also one of the things that reasons why we need people staying on this app is so that they continue self-reporting, because essentially we're going to have the quantitative data through the smart tech, but this is our qualitative data. So we're going to need to encourage people to do this. And okay, it might be only a percentage of our user group. We accept that, but it's the more of this group we have, the more accurate the bigger data will be as to what people are doing and what's popular, and it won't just be on the gym. It'll be beyond the gym, anything from swimming and jogging, cycling, walking your dog.
The other thing about what was mentioned this morning from Mike's presentation was about that, and if it was the 6.1 million or the 34 point whatever million it was that were actually missing the intensity. So those people actually recording their minutes of activity and perceive that they're doing enough for health enhancing benefits are actually not tracking their intensity. So we know that all activity has a benefit, whether you're socially interacting, you're out in the fresh air, whatever it would be. But for health enhancing activity and return on investment to engage people like GPs and public health and people like that, we've actually got the scale in where people can select their intensity, which ranges on kind of things like recognised RPE and Borg scale kind of evidence base around from mild to moderate to vigorous to meet those 150 minutes recommendations, or a combination of mild and vigorous. People actually report their intensity, so we'll know total minutes of activity, could be walking the dog, taking the kids to school, compared with intensity of that activity as well. So you can report different things to different people at different times.
And we'll be surveying on entry how active they were on entry, so then we can show the graph of how active they're getting, and therefore how effective these interventions are to that person.
I'm just asking at this point how many people are thinking about considering something like technology or apps or digital data gathering within their existing physical activity or sport work. Is it kind of like resonating? Is it kind of like making sense with? Okay, great, thanks. Okay, that's a very valid point, and I think what we're trying to do is entering that into that space which hasn't been entered into before, because we all wear our tech, but the tech that we currently wear is about me and about you, and it stays with you, and it's about your goals and it's about your data. What we right, yeah. Okay. What I was going to say was that the back end of the presentation shows the dashboards of data that you can see from the whole population through downloading a free app. Because obviously, I think the Fitbit idea is a great idea, but there'll be quite a cost to that in terms of producing those pieces of kit. This is a free to download app that gets across a whole community and captures things like how lonely they feel, how socially connected they feel, how many social Facebook likes they've made, how many workouts they've shared, the whole raft of rich data about what's going on with that person, their communities, their families. So this is definitely about the place and the place being able to see its outcomes. But we'll come on to that. Okay.
So the other reason people would download the app is to find activity providers, and that's what we're trying to do with this app, is to open that up a bit and also provide a bit of an outreach post for leisure operators as well as local trainers, and obviously they will then help drive the system and bring people down to the space. So that's another reason that they will download it. So finding, and it sort of becomes a bit of like an Uber of fitness, I guess, just to easily find activity providers. We've got these gyms out there, and another reason why we're doing this is just to get people to start promoting it. And so that's what another thing the app does. It allows people to show off a little bit of what they're doing and share their workout, inspire their friends, and that sort of thing. So, it's a no-brainer. That these are very visual. Our gyms are very visual, things in the environment, and we need to use that and exploit that to encourage other people to get down to that space and also use it.
There is an evidence-based reason for that as well. I mean, the GP guy was talking about how GPs are still very trusted within the system in terms of behaviour change. And there's an interesting report which was done by Ipsos Mori a couple of years ago called Perils of Perception. And what it looked at was a national survey of about 5,000 people, asking about, basic questions about who do you listen to around your health, who would you listen to about this, how many teenage pregnancies are the average, and all these kind of questions. And it was actually showing what people thought and then the reality. The thing around GPs, which was alluded to, is that 51% of people will actually change their health behaviour if their GP says so. Local authorities 1%, because there's no association between health and local authority yet, because the transition from public health into local authority is still fairly new, and that association's coming. The second highest factor was the someone like me. So if you hear something from your peer, it feels agendaless. So, if you're a 55-year-old lady who's a bit concerned about getting active, and your best friend Facebooks you about some fantastic activity she's had down the park or on the street corner, that sounds a bit bad, or anywhere basically in that space, you're as likely to take that up as if a GP refers it. So we're looking at this kind of social activity as being almost like the keeping it real data, because we know from surveying people at a time that there's an element of I'm going to say what the survey wants me to say, and it kind of gets a bit contrived. When people are in their own space, being social, it's kind of real. And we want to capture that amount of likes and what people are saying and get that social activity to come through to contextualise some of the quantitative stuff as well.
These are just examples of some of the shares.
So there is that question there. Is the idea of capturing social media data attractive to a place for context? And if so, how do you think you might use that in terms of, you know, engagement or community development or, you know, marketing? You know, would kind of like real active social media data be useful for places? Anybody? Throw me a bone.
I can't answer from a place's point of view, but from a personal point of view, my zone points last night got 4 social media shares because I put it onto Facebook, I put it onto Twitter, etc.
Yeah.
I got a nudge from a couple of friends saying, where are you, what are you doing, etc. So from a personal point, my zone point of view, sharing my exercise does work.
Yeah.
And the nudge bit is really interesting there because I often get a little message from somebody going, oh, I haven't seen you do anything this week, David, what's going
Yeah.
on? So that whole nudge bit for an individual is really very powerful. I can't answer from a place's point.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's great. Thank you.
So can I just, who's this aimed at age-wise specifically? I only ask because I work in a school, I work for British Weightlifting, but I work in a school as well, and I know that my kids don't use Facebook or Twitter, so in that sense they'll use Instagram as
Yeah.
the main protocol, in which case is that going to be aligned to that, or is that purely aligned to something like Facebook, which is much more of a sharing?
Now we've got all the platforms connected in, and they'll be kind of like, we'll be like socially driving like key hashtags and key tags to put out on these mediums. So we're looking at that, and Snapchat and all those kind of things. So yeah, George is far more down with the kids than I am, but there you go.
Sorry, is the app a single app, or is it tiered towards different demographics of people? For example, children perhaps want to see all the graphs and all the data, but they might want to engage in this sort of thing anyway.
Yeah, it's a bit of both, because what the user sees on their personal dashboard will be different to what a place sees on the place-based dashboard. So you're a director of public health, you're going to be interested in different data than your comparison with your best mate in terms of how many steps or how many press-ups they've done that week, kind of thing. So there are going to be different interfaces for activator, user and place host holder, if you like.
And I think there's a lot of development to cater it more to the schools market and to the family market. That would be a next step for us to make it have a sort of a family profile, because it'd be great if the kids were getting their families active and being that little activator at home.
I mean, just on that, closing that kind of loop a little bit, we're working with AFP, Association for PE in Schools, who have just come back from a ministerial meeting last week with DFE, endorsing actually on the back of the Minister for State for Children's announcement of the primary premium extension from November. So each primary school will get on average about £19,000. I used to work on a regional strategic advisory group with Ofsted that advised schools on what they should spend their money on for long-term gain, not throwing it away on white van man, no safeguard and all that kind of stuff. But the commitments come out about 2 or 3 weeks ago, but there's only a commitment for the next 12 months, and there's no commitment past that. So what we're actually saying to schools, and which is what AFP is saying now, and we're quoted within them, is that they want to endorse an approach where there's a physical legacy left from this money. That if you have some infrastructure in a school that promotes active play, key motor function, gains confidence and a little bit of fitness, then all the sports that want to come in around that are working with a more connected, confident group of people. But also the fact that because some of these facilities are back out in their community, we're trying to address that school holiday drop-off, which is quite marked. There's a recent BHF report that shows that kids' activity in schools drops right off through the summer holiday. They kind of like start again when they go back to school. Is to actually then the kids are the ones that are telling the parents to come down to the park, and they tell them what they've been doing on their kit that's similar. So we're trying to get that kind of family agenda going. The second thing that we're doing with the schools is we're working with Sky TV and Fit in 5, which is like they do kind of like videos around, if you've only got 5 minutes you can do this, that and the other kind of workout, to do school-based exercise like that in and around the playground, in and around our kit if possible, and developing a teacher training pack that enables the teachers to have that sustainability, that if the funding goes, they've got kit, they've got education, they've got training and confidence to carry on that process. So we're trying to cover off across the live course.
I've got two kind of linked questions. Within the app, kind of how much of the data collection is passive or requires the person to kind of add in data? And then how, in terms of sort of addressing behaviour change and patterns of kind of falling in and out of physical activity, kind of how does the app support people that might be really inspired, got involved in the app, and then for whatever reason something else crops up, will they choose not to engage with it for that going forward?
So
Okay, there's a couple of things with that one. I'll take the active passive bit first, because obviously our best kind of yardstick that we go by in the UK at the moment is the Active People Active Lives survey, which is a self-report survey done over the phone. And for those people who've been in local authorities and seen their stats appear in National League tables, have done that year on year. We kind of like feel there's a few anomalies of reporting, but self-report is still kind of the industry standard unless you get into accelerometers and lab conditions and things like this. So there's a fair percentage of this which is obviously self-reported. We get automatic data through the smart tech on the kit, or we just kind of like jumping a few slides ahead of the presentation here. So within our kit, there's the Bluetooth transmitting technology, which will record activity in and around that space automatically. So we're looking at issues around if you have an enclosed space, for example, like a park with 3 or 4 gated entrances, we can track people in and out of that site. So you know how your marketing to push people to that site might have worked. We can also put some technology around the gym space. You know, many people have gone into the park and interacted with that gym space. And then the energy-based kit and the smart tech will also tell you how many revolutions, how many repetitions, how many watts of energy have been generated by that piece of kit. And with a few formulas which you're working up, you can work that into activity hours. So if you don't get a lot of app activity, you can still get space-based activity. When people download the app, and we've looked at a lot of the apps that are on the market, we looked at things like, I mean, I've got a Garmin. I'm not plugging Garmin, but I didn't know this feature happened. I'd had this watch maybe a couple of months. I got an insight report. I got a text or an email to my phone, something like that, and it said something like, "Congratulations, you're in the top 10% for your age group," which I didn't like. In terms of things like steps and walking, I was like, "Oh, blimey!" So it's a bit of a nudge and a bit of a prompt. We've got a whole raft of prompts which prompt people to, you know, we haven't seen you for a week. Is there any activity you want to record? We haven't noticed you've been in the gym for this time. All those kind of things. So we've built in some motivational stuff. And I know UK Active are doing a lot of work on the moment through Steve Mann about, you know, evaluating the motivational impact of an apps, and that's due to come out. But obviously you've got that big picture stuff going on. You've got individual cases about how people are going. You know, a lady I used to work with was constantly checking her Fitbit because her little league table of friends wanted just go out for lunchtime walk, so she'd go out for a lunchtime walk. So there'll be the self-motivation bit, there'll be the nudging kind of bit, but then there's also the badges and the incentives and the prizes and the altruistic stuff we're looking at in terms of how you benefit back to your place. So again, all those people who want to get fitter and stronger, that's great. But what about the people who turn up for things like Race for Life, or they do a lot of work for charity? They want to do something for something other than themselves. So we're looking at how we put that back into the place, and then point to that place to sustain itself.
yeah, I think the push points will be friends and family and place, and playing on those with social media, and also with the space being friendly to all ages, so the children drag the parent back down, and so that the parent can actually go there with their child and taking the barriers away. But so playing on friends, family, and the potential of the place and the partners in the place, which we hope would then help sustain the interest. So yeah, we want the other sort of push back to the space is making this space trainer and activator and freelance trainer or paid trainer friendly, and a space that they can earn money or meet their targets, getting communities active. So they're also going to be a good important part of propelling and driving activity down the space. And to accommodate that, this is the gym that we're going to be launching next month in Warwick, and we're creating spaces that are trainer friendly, because we feel that is going to be an important part of getting more people down.
I think the point there is that when they put the social media out, that was a response from one post. So I think we're trying to tap into that interest, you know, because that's a lot of activity that kind of gets lost.
So, question, but you've got to turn those light into a motivation.
Yeah.
I think that's the
Yeah.
key, I think.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people look, oh yeah, comes, oh yeah, like that, but then don't give it a second thought. It's turning that into a motivation.
Exactly.
to actually
And that's what we're saying is we're not standing up here saying that we are the solution to a place activity. We're saying we're providing some tools to actually, if the system's clued in, you know, if your sports development people, if your physical activity strategy, if your marketing comms and strategy, community development work, all that kind of stuff is linked in, it's another asset. It's another thing to contextualise and to go in. You know, it has to work. Like I said, the stats I was spouting about this morning from Dudley, they took 5 years to get to that point. You know, we had some battles with that, and we didn't have this kind of insight and this kind of tool. So I'm just trying to put the cherry on the cake with what I know these outdoor spaces can do, but actually giving something which, when you're kind of like up against it and saying, well, why should we replace that bit of kit? Here's your answers, here's your media, here's your data. You can make some justification for it.
So there'll be ways to apply to become an activator on the app, and ways for the place to moderate whether they accept that activator in that space, and standards that we can apply that align to your place's standards. These are the standards that Clapham Common use at the moment.
So that's your safeguarding, that's your qualifications, etc.
Are you going to be collecting personal data?
From,
Well, anybody who uses the app, will you be expecting them to?
it's all anonymised data. It's all anonymised data.
Have you thought about the concept of, obviously, if you've got children using the app, about letting people know where they are and things
Well,
like
the children element, because we're putting an age limit on that, it will be, say if it was me and I was taking my girls to do some activity, I would register a family member. There'd be no details about the family. It'd be like me plus 1 or me plus 2. So we could actually, I might have more data than somebody who's only registers themselves, but it'd only be, that adult data that we'd be getting, and the rest would be self-report, like I came with my kids, so this, here's a selfie, here's that and the other. Because obviously in the world of safeguarding and the use of images, we know there's a world out there that's kind of like trying to access that for all the wrong reasons. But people use social media in a kind of like an ignorant way of those kind of issues. You have to be inside the system to understand the concepts of how people might use that in the wrong way. We're just trying to contextualise that within probably a safer package, which is why each place would put their own safeguarding parameters on the usage. We're just providing the framework for a place to adapt it.
No, I'm just thinking about maybe some sort of guidance, like you've got a young person who's using it, a little warning, think about who you're sharing your
Yeah.
post with and that sort of
it's the same, like even with things like you might know for, you know, again, we'll get onto this in a little of the dashboards. You'll know times of day that are popular. You'll know what activities are more popular, what places they're happening in is more popular. Obviously, to get to the level of rich data we're talking, will take time for the usage to build up. But the app's got that potential, is what we're saying, you know. And we know that the numbers are there. We know that the thinking's there around using tech and social media. So this is what part of this workshop's about, is some of the parameters that we've got that you can cross-reference through to see if we're actually giving the data out that you want to see as a place.
So this photo is of the Olympic Park, and the two pieces at the front are our energy, two of our energy pieces, which will be the smart gym equipment. So we'll track the hits as well as generate electricity. And behind you've got a space that is used for martial arts and various different classes with our parks at the moment. And then you've got the play facilities behind. And I think this really sort of summarises where we're going. And these are the types of spaces that will really work for what we're trying to do. So now we're going to look at the types of dashboards.
Okay, so this is an example dashboard which will show things like increases in people who are registered 0 times 30, 1 times 30, 2 times 30, etc. We also, on one of the screens before, showed the pink curve, which was well-being. Now, in terms of mental health and well-being, there's a whole host of kind of measures out there. Some have more traction than others, you know, WebWebs and psychological surveys and this, that and the other. But this is just to show people a fairly basic correlation between how much exercise they do and how they feel. So they record their own well-being. So we can track how people are feeling through that and hopefully show correlation between how active they are with that and also how much they're active generally. So some of the things that we've got, which we touched on this morning, these are some of the methods for capturing the data. Information via user reporting and information via smart tech. So that will be, we're thinking Bluetooth at the moment, through devices in and around the settings, which will capture that output from that equipment automatically. So that can be scanned and uploaded and analysed automatically. So if 1,000 people use that bike without any application, you can have 1,000 sets of data coming back, 1,000 hits. So a hit is every time everybody uses that piece of kit. You'd also get the total energy generated. Of course, we talked about energy this morning, and that's one area we want to kind of expand into, that social good, that energy transfer, you know, possible heating, lighting, but also it gives you an easy formula to turn watts into time and activity hours. So this is the anonymised information. I'm glad I got that out. I could struggle with that word. It's collected from the user action. So you get all their logged activities. So you could be a place that doesn't have a gym, but you want to just see what's going on in your patch. You get all the outdoor space and gyms that are visited captured. Movement through GPS is captured in the areas of those mapped spaces that we've got. All the demographics will be on there. Wellbeing and climate action. So we've got a list of things which try and look about sustainability, which people can tick as they're going along. And other parameters that we're kind of working with, which are the more usual suspects or some of the more unusual ones. I've had some conversations with Birmingham Council, Coventry, Hertfordshire, a few others, and from my experience in public health, trying to look at where the agenda's going now and where the agenda for physical activity is going now, in terms of saying we can look at an impact on social isolation, we can measure loneliness and you know, try and combat that. We can capture people's emotions and how they feel, and actually contextualise that back and always break it down by those things of age, gender, ethnicity, and all those kind of parameters. So one of those things is, you know, what else would guys like to see in the audience if they were a dashboard reviewer or a report runner on activity in their space? What kind of parameters would you like to see you've been able to show? You know, we've got all the usual ones like age, ethnicity, gender,
Long-term health conditions.
So I'll just run through a few more of these dashboards. We've got a little bit more time. So you get reported hits and detailed data. That's then homogenised through the app and through the back office work into providing a combination approach. So, over the course of 12 months, and this is based on some of the outputs we've got from some of our sites and from some other apps and services that operate in this area, you'll be able to show how many sessions you've had, how many of those are newly active based on baseline and then self-reported activity moving up through the scales. The estimated site usage would mean that of those spaces, if you track the minutes against the pieces of equipment, you could see that 65% of that space was used through that 12 months. So you've got 35% of capacity to market or push in terms of spaces and time available in around that. You've got active app users, so some people might log on, download it, never use it. Active's the ones that are reporting, planning workouts, booking sessions. You can record how many people per site have actually recorded an improvement or an increase in their activity minutes. You can see how many people have recorded improvements in self-reported well-being. And you can also see how much income has been generated through that space. So you can keep a track of your local agreements with your activators, how much you might want to give to charity, how much you're keeping back for maintenance and renewals and stuff like that. And broken down by age, ethnicity, gender, household income. Sport England are very interested in targeting those groups that are below the £2,500 a month threshold. To see that's that they're attacking it, that's that they're finding that's the stubborn group to try and move. Other things we can show on the social media side, again, graphs can be presented by numbers of users, by average well-being score, how many badges have been won, so we get motivational badges, you've done your 150 minutes, you've done this, you've done the other. Well-being, location check-ins, how many people are going to place A into place B and logging in, how many new plans have been set, how many weekly minutes have been recorded, by date and time, and cross-referenced by these kind of parameters at the top. So if you wanted to run a report on how many 65-year-old women with a Bangladeshi background had improved their diabetes in the last 12 months, theoretically, if the data's going through it, you can run that report.
Excuse me, long-term health conditions, what about other disabilities?
We have a disability question on registration, which people can opt out on. So, are you registered disabled? Yes, no. List it. But that's kind of like, we just use that as a general term, numbers of people with disabilities, because it's too wide of a spectrum, and it's kind of like, I mean, when we put our stuff in Dudley, because obviously the TGO stuff is worked up with inclusive fitness industry, so it recognises things like transfer and wheelchair use and stuff like that. But we're looking at self-reported conditions. So if they put in what a condition is, that is a parameter in the app. So if you drop down those things, all those conditions that people have self-reported will be on there.
And is that going to include like their wheelchair users?
Yeah, if they want to declare that on registration, yeah.
So where is the app available to download from?
Sorry?
Where is your app available to download, and what's the name of your app?
The name is Activate, TGO Activate, and it's not available yet because we're still in testing.
Are you searching now? Yeah. It will be on Play Store and
But
iOS.
it'll be very soon, yeah. It should be.
Are you not with it on Android and iOS?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is another one about how you can test and refer different places. So we've got Clapham Common, Regent's Park, represented by the different colours, cross-referenced by people dog walking and running, by total minutes of activity. So you can kind of see and start to get this social impact across your patch. So why is that one higher? What's going on around Thursday and Friday over here? Why are we getting this peak? What's going on? That kind of stuff. So we're just trying to give you a flavour of the kind of things that we can try and show. Again, That's total minutes of activity, average minutes per user over one site. We're running through this now. More of the same. So generally the repeat slide from this morning is that you start to get a general picture of heat related to activity in and around your patch. What else we've done is obviously look at how this might get implemented locally. And this is a fairly broad brushstroke in terms of, you know, from coming inside the system, looking at how we look at what the process might be, the outcomes, the assumptions, the kind of things that we need to invest, you know, at the front end with our inputs, what we might see short, long term, with some recognised external factors and assumptions around this whole process, because we are trying to do something different. We've done a 10-stage broad brushstroke activation plan, which we would go through with a local authority or a host and refine down to their specifics. The next page down through this, which we're not going to show today in too much detail, has got a section about what success would look like. That's blank, because each place will have different success criteria. So this isn't a fait accompli. This is a kind of middle ground negotiation kind of scenario. So what we do think from experience, that if places haven't got a system-wide approach, you might not get the data you want to get back from it. You know, there's lots of places that have, you know, lumped things in fields and said, well, why aren't people turning up? People still need to be motivated, supported, instructed, marketed, and followed up with appropriate services. So this is how the system needs to plug in. So this is around, you know, a lot of local authority systems, local comms, making sure that people sign up at the beginning, that politicians are aware of this, there's no hidden surprises, that your system players are brought in. Local communities are involved from the start, and those communications are driven in, especially when you talk about how you might manage that space, whether you have a community-led social enterprise, whether you want to use your existing sports development team and use that as outreach and offer these services as part of your extension to your membership for your leisure centres. So whichever way you want to go with that, could be your friends of parks, it could be a couple of group providers, it could be people that develop over time through volunteering. That needs to be ironed out about what the art of the possible is at the start of that journey. And then obviously it's got to meet local needs. It's got to sit in with your local strategies and targets to get some traction in the first place. It's got to be clear about what the business model looks like. It can be ongoing. It can be flexible. It needs to be refined, and it needs to move at the pace that is comfortable for that place. We're not saying here's a product, here's a service. It's all done and dusted in 3 months. Depending on what relationship we have, we'll be there for the longer haul to make this stick. And of course it will be localised. So again, we're not presenting the solution, we presented a solution that we'll refine with you in and around your place. So that's tried to reflect where you guys are at, where we're coming from, and hopefully have that connection.